In this video, Mike does not hold back. He discusses what the silent majority are afraid to say for fear of attack. He continues to tackle his concerns with the Black Lives Matter movement, affirmative action programs including the appointment of Kamala Harris as vice presidential candidate, and why the Second Amendment must be preserved in order to keep an overzealous government in check. He finishes by discussing the fact that the Democratic Party has had a long history of the support of slavery, and that the efforts of the BLM really should be directed at changing the name of that party over the attacks on historic statues and flags. As ever, he offers not only these challenges, but also shares a vision of the options we could avail ourselves of towards a more equitable America for everyone.
There are people who are offended by Confederate statues and the Confederate flag. By monuments, they say, celebrate white supremacy and colonialism. By Trump supporters and by those who refuse to get on their knees and cave before the Black Lives Matter movement. I will never apologize, and I don't care who I offend. I am white. I was not around during the days of slavery. I am not responsible for this injustice. The idea of racial guilt is offensive. Where is the Miss White America contest? White History Month, white entertainment television, white-only colleges, white-only dating sites, white-only bars and restaurants. Where are quotas and affirmative action programs for Caucasians? There are none of these because it would be considered racist. Yale is now actively being investigated by the Department of Justice as white and Asian students were systematically overlooked even when they were more highly qualified to be accepted into the college. I have talked to many qualified candidates who were overlooked for jobs due to affirmative action programs and were even told by the interviewer to me that that is racist, should go to the most qualified candidate, not based on gender or race. I believe in the US Constitution. I came here as an immigrant and I worked hard. The forefathers of America worked hard to end slavery with the death of 620,000 Americans during the Civil War. Americans defeated Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan and liberated the Holocaust death camps. We kept communism from conquering the world. No country has done as much as America in its short history. My heroes are George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Teddy Roosevelt. Washington defeated the greatest army on earth and became one of our greatest presidents. Lincoln, who saved the Union, abolished slavery and inspired generations with his strong rhetoric. Thomas Jefferson is the most intelligent man to ever serve as President of the United States. Teddy Roosevelt led the charge into the 20th century. These are targets that many of the Black Lives Movement wish removed. Together, these heroes and historic Americans, which are being targeted, allow the ability of people like Bernie Sanders, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and AOC to dump their misguided ideas without fear of reprise in a free nation. With all our problems, we are still the top choice of any country that immigrants wish to come in this planet. The American dream lives, but socialist agenda will kill it. I do not want changes, as you are all aware, to the American judicial system. I'm sorry, I want changes to the American judicial system. And I've talked about this in detail at prior club meetings. This is one area I think the BLM movement can assist, but I am referring to the BLM movement in small capital letters, and not the Marxist and socialist dangerous organization that we are confronted with right now. It makes me totally sick when Roger Goodell, from the NFL commissioner, makes a $250 million commitment to capital letter BLM. When we all know, all along, he was totally and adamantly opposed to it. But this is what's sickening, is the number of corporations that are just rolling over, being steamrolled by this organization. And it's wrong. I believe our police officers are generally decent, honorable men and women who are doing a difficult, dangerous, and thankless job. They are now having to bear the added burden of listening to insults shouted at them by, for the most part, spoiled, ungrateful people, many of which are barely out of high school. I told you the story of me attending the protests on Las Vegas Boulevard, and more than 50% of the protesters that I saw were white, and they were under, I estimate, 20 years of age. Police officers have become the punching bag for our nation. I can tell you that defunding our police, if it occurs, we will see a new tyranny that those even calling for it will end up being fearful. Remember, Hitler also defunded police to get stronger control of Germany. I support the Second Amendment because our country was founded on the ability to take up arms against a government that has become too controlling over our lives. There is a lot I don't like about Trump, but I like his attack on overbearing, overregulating government. We will never see a Holocaust here because too many Americans are armed. With the defunding of police and the anarchy in our streets, thank God for the Second Amendment. It is very tense with all the bloodshed in our cities, and I talked to a close friend who happens to be my personal trainer, and he's an arms expert, and he told me you cannot buy ammunition online right now. Everyone is sold out. That tells you where we're at right now as a society. And the boiling part could well be the election. And I'll tell you what my prediction is. I think on election night you will see Trump winning, and then as all the mail-in ballots come in, you will see him losing. Here we go. Reparations are a racial plunder. There is no group in the world that hasn't been oppressed at some time. I am Irish and I am French. Many Irish, including my ancestors, left during the potato famine and were met with extreme prejudice in America. One of the only jobs the Irish could find was in the mines and building highways in extreme environments. And as an example, many Irish lives were lost building the Alaska highway called Alcan. My great-grandfather worked in a coal mine for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and was always in debt to the local general store, because the way companies used to perform back in those days is the miners never had enough money to get through 2 weeks, so they would take credit at the general store in order to feed their families, so they were always in debt and could never leave. When they tried to form a union, the picket line was busted and several miners were shot to death. My great-grandfather was there. Back in those days, unions made sense, but now they are mostly just cash cows for those running them. Slavery was wrong and shameful, but reparations are a non-starter. Now, to change course for a moment, after our gyms, I want to bring you up to date on something. We were sued when a 6'3" man walked into the women's changing room at our gym in San Diego. He wore a wig and then got fully nude, but declared himself a woman, and he was still very much a man. In fact, when I interacted with the staff, he was very well endowed, they told me. And then staff escorted him out of the building. When the women ran out of the changing room complaining a man was nude in the changing room and they were not comfortable. I'm going to say this. He sued us. There are only two genders. Deal with it. Gender is determined at birth by your DNA. Reality is not hateful. I do not respect Joe Biden's philosophy for picking a candidate. Instead of saying he was going to pick the most qualified candidate, he instead said he was going to pick a woman likely of color. One of the most powerful and important positions in America has to go to the most qualified person and not a person chosen simply due to their race or gender. I was sickened in Canada when Prime Minister Trudeau announced he would pick cabinet members with priority going to women instead of the most qualified candidates. More than 2/3 of his cabinet positions went to women, and almost all the positions were vacated by the end of his first term. I was so glad I was no longer in Canada when this happened, to have to witness it. You have a right to disagree with me, but you don't have a right to silence me. Being offended by me does not trump the First Amendment. I have worked very hard for every one of you in this room that is a club member, and I ask you respect my voice, and I respect your voice. Generations of Americans died for freedom of speech, not freedom to suppress speech. To say you are offended is merely an attempt to prioritize your feelings above everyone and everything else. I have much to say about the history of the Democratic Party and its ties to slavery in America, but I will save that until the next meeting. Give you all something to look forward to. But I will say, if you are forcing organizations like the Kansas City Chiefs football team to change its name, then a bigger argument should be made for the Democratic Party to change its name due to its long historic ties to advocating slavery and maintaining it. Thank you, members.